What is going on, guys? Welcome to Power Hour. And this week we are diving into from silos to synergy and how to boost profit with digital ecosystems. But what does that mean? We'll get right into that. So we're going to be talking about how to run a business like a digital ecosystem using digital technologies that affects both revenue and bottom line success. A lot of companies use a lot of digital tools. It's not crazy to use 20, 30, 50 different SaaS tools these days, but how do those interact with each other and how does it affect your workflows and your productivity and ultimately profitability for you as a company? So we're going to be diving into that today, but today I'm joined with my buddies over at Equipt. We've got Andrajit and Amarpal over at Equipt. So really quickly, let me give you a high-level overview of what they do, and then I'm going to kind of go into the backgrounds really quickly, and then we're going to dive right in. And then at the end, we're going to be opening the floor for questions for you guys, and so you have a chance to engage and ask these guys questions about how you can implement this within your own organization. So high-level overview of Equipt. We've had these guys on the podcast. We had a really great episode. So if you want to know more about their backstory, just go check out our episode that we released probably, I don't know, 6 months ago, something like that, maybe. Yeah. And then they also just presented at the Energy Tech Night in Midland. Great turnout there. So you can go check out that presentation as well. But Equipt has plug-and-play software that digitally threads every resource and process within the ecosystem of assets and service operations, providing actionable and predictable insights that directly lowers operational cost and increases revenue, while giving users a much-needed transparency and simple, intuitive user interface. It's really cool, really slick. So let's go really quickly into the backgrounds. Indy, your background, obviously you're the co-founder, president here of Equipt. You have 25 years of sales and operation general management experience with major OFS companies. After years of struggling using different softwares to run businesses, you decided to co-found Equipt with Amar, and Equipt is helping simplify businesses and reduce profitability leakages. And Amar, also co-founder, head of operations and product innovation here at Equipt. Got 15 years experience in value chain management, offshore, onshore IT management, and business transformation, and just a deep domain expertise in supply chain and asset management to Equipt. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm ready to dive in. The $1 million question is, I think that everybody's asking themselves is, what is a digital ecosystem? How would you guys define that?
So you kind of touched on it, Jake. So think about organizations and the number of different software applications that they use, and then how all these things connect with each other. It is not just the applications, it's also the relationships, the interdependencies of someone's output becoming someone's input. That entire complexity is what the digital ecosystem is all about.
So how would you guys define, like, what is maybe before we even dive into the importance, maybe what is like some of the misconceptions or maybe possible downfalls? I mean, obviously, especially in this space, data management's a nightmare, and I think it's one of those problems that it's only getting worse as new startups pop up, and there's new SaaS tools, and there's new ways to do things. It's one of those things where it seems like we never really have this under control. And this is not exclusive to oil and gas or to energy. This is kind of just like business in general in 2023, right? How do you guys think about that?
Do you want me to take this?
Yeah, go ahead.
So the way I see digital ecosystem boosting and how I see the downfall both, I will go from the digital ecosystem. Think about having a 360-degree view of not only data, but also your processes and your resources. So there's very less software systems out there who will give you 360-degree view. And the downfall, if you don't have a 360-degree view, then you cannot make decisions. You cannot make data-driven decisions, right? You cannot predict. So that's why people try to forecast their business and try to budget their business. There's a lot of assumptions. The assumptions are because they don't have a 360-degree view. So advantage and the downfall, if they don't have it, there's always an assumptions, and assumptions, you always have a risk of missing their targets, right? So that's why digital ecosystem is so important.
So let's dive into the importance of digital ecosystems.
So I mean, we're kind of touching on it, but think about it. If just like Amarpal said, when people start using different applications, whether it's SaaS or on-prem or whatever, and they're making decisions on these siloed kind of areas because that's all their focus is on. But a lot of their decisions are getting impacted or impacting somebody else, but they're not looking at that on how it's impacting the other, downstream or upstream person. It's more about what am I focused on and what am I going to do and how is my KPI going to look good. So that is why it is extremely important to have that 360-degree view and those interconnections, which give us a more holistic picture of our businesses operate like an ecosystem. So why, there are customers, there are suppliers, and then there are multiple departments in between who are doing something for each other to finally get to a customer journey, make that customer journey better. So why would we look at these as silos? In fact, I'm going to just share this slide. Energy companies, there was a study from PwC that came out, and then for our businesses are not that rigid. Things change all the time. So that fluidity that we are looking for is never there. So that is how people start getting out of the system and going and creating those our friendly Excel spreadsheets, and then to tell, to communicate up to management as to what's going on. We start extracting stuff out of different places and create our PowerPoint presentation. So everyone's using something different. Nothing is real time. And ultimately, you create these organizational silos and these data islands, which doesn't work. Ultimately, your business outcome is what gets hampered. So this study actually says that the energy industry alone has $1 trillion opportunity by becoming more efficient using the right kind of digital tools, and that too by 2025. So that's a huge impact that we all kind of recognize that there are leakages. Anyone in a leadership position is always scratching their head as to where's the money gone. We made our top line, we didn't make our bottom line. What's really going on? And in my experience, we were not able to. In fact, you mentioned 40 to 60 applications. We had 794, which is actually pretty average. It's pretty average. We just talked to a potential client who has 2,600. So it's insane the amount of things that get lost and that are not live. So then you start making those decisions in a more siloed or manner, and the business outcome is not there, and that's where the money's going.
Yeah, one point I want to make here, right, Jake? Think about your past life where you worked in the corporate. Have you not seen people were so worried about their performances on their departments only? The reason they were so siloed performances and they were focused on their silos department outputs because there were not systems which were connecting them to other departments. Think about the all seeing it as one ecosystem, and every performance depends or contingent on other performances. Then you will get more unified approach towards the output of performances, right?
Yeah.
So that's a big thing right now, right? How you take people out of their interdepartmental performances, then organization performance, business performance as a whole.
One of the I'll use I guess an analogy or an example from E&P specifically, right? So historically, you've got drilling has kind of like their own KPIs, own systems, own processes, and then completions has theirs, and then production has theirs, and then the geologists and a lot of the finance guys are going to be judged based on the performance of the actual well, and then the well comes in significantly lower than what they anticipated, and there's just a major drop off because nobody was aligned on what the actual outcome was. They were so focused on their own.
That's right, because there was no 360-degree view of individual department performance, how it impacts the top line or a bottom line of the complete company, right? So once you have that view, and it's not only the view from top down, but bottom up too, right? Even I should know if I'm working somewhere in between, I should know, okay, how my performance is impacting the top performance up, right? That view is very important. I will give an example. We are working with a client who has, let's say, multiple departments, multiple product lines. One product line works completely different when it comes to their maintenance and repair. The other, completely different. And I understand why it's different because the nature of the equipment, I get that. But then as an individual, as a creator, innovator, we have to think through, okay, how our system, like our tool, could bring standardization. Even the process is different, the way they do different, how the output will be measured in the way and it's relatable, right? So
Mhm.
that's where most of the thought process goes. How we can bring the output of individuals into a one standard way for some people to interpret and get an understanding.
Absolutely. I think another great example is also like sales and marketing. I mean, that applies to every single company if you're selling a product or service. Is a lot of times you have each of these groups siloed, right? Kind of running their own systems and processes. Marketing is out sending campaigns and doing events and doing a bunch of other things, creating content. And then you've got sales over here that's just trying to like grind. But ultimately, marketing should hopefully be, if you're doing it right, should be bringing in leads and sending it and qualifying that over to sales. And you need some, and that's why like good CRMs like HubSpot and Salesforce and things like that companies use to hopefully bring some sort of 360-degree view. And so if you look at that, and it seems like a lot of sales and marketing departments, maybe not necessarily in energy, but like in other industries, really have that together. It's astonishing how many groups do not have CRMs in this space. But why not take that same concept and apply it to the rest of the business, right?
Exactly. So I think you're touching on it. So what happens is you just specifically talked about a CRM,
Mm-hmm.
but once that portion is done, someone has to go and execute it, right? So they are again in their own little silo and in their space. So what we are trying to do is look at the ecosystem of what's going to happen to the next guy and the guy outside. Seldom do we provide access to people, to our applications, people outside the organization. We do that in our B2C lives. Take Amazon, for example, or Uber or whatever, pizza.
Mm-hmm.
We have access to what's exactly happening with the order. Have we placed the order? When is it going to show up? We are the fourth stop from when it's going to be delivered and so
Mm-hmm.
on. But here we are talking, okay, it's almost like, let me place the order on Amazon and then hope for the best when it's going to show up. That's what happens in our business to business lives. But Amazon gives us access. We are outside the organization as to how that is getting executed.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah, it's a very good point. So think about, you just brought a very small portion of the ecosystem, which is sales and marketing, right? And very well said. People used to consider marketing as the cost organization, but no, today marketing is no longer the cost organization. It's a profit organization. They have to show ROI on all the investments they're making in marketing, right? So how the sales and marketing has to work together, because marketing can generate leads, but how sales execute the leads is very important, right? And that communication, that the note taking, or what the when you're trying to create leads, how you are analyzing the characteristics of the leads and communicating with the salespeople is very important. So how this communication flows, how this transactions flows between marketing and sales is again a 360-degree view within an ecosystem. There's one more ecosystem. So ecosystem is not only one for a business. There are multiple ecosystems in the business, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they should be all connected to ultimately give you one big ecosystem.
How do we solve this problem? It's a trillion dollar problem in energy.
So first off, I mean, think about it, right? A lot of us are talking about, what's going to happen, especially the oil and gas industry. We are finding it hard to attract talent, right?
Mm-hmm.
So by 2030, 30% of the workforce is going to be Gen Zs. They're not going to work
If we can attract them in the first place.
if we can attract some of them in the first place.
Yeah.
Fair enough. And even if they come, they're not going to be using these clunky systems. So they'll go again outside the system and perpetuate that problem of data silos and data islands and so on. So we need to stop thinking about the traditional way that we have, which has worked, but the technology has changed significantly over the last 3 to 4 years. What we could do, what would take us multiple years to do, now we can do it really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
We need to stop going after these siloed old technologies, those platforms, and then look at more intuitive ways that help people to get, whether you're a Gen Z. Sometimes we've also heard in our industry that, oh, I'm too old to learn technology. Well, if you can order something on Amazon, I mean, I asked that question, can you order something on Amazon? Yes, I can. Well, then you should be able to use a software that is as intuitive. it does not have to be that rigid.
Yeah.
So it has to be a flexible solution which provides that transparency. And you know, it cannot take forever. Market changes so quickly. So we cannot behave like we are still back in 1999, you know, taking on these old siloed systems and so on. So how do we solve this problem? Let's give you a quick example. Amarpal kind of touched on this. One of the ways to think about technology is with processes. So you we have to kind of combine those two in order to solve the problem. And then I'll give you a quick example here of how an asset and service operations system works. So you have to start with planning and forecasting. And then once you've done that, inputs are coming in from sales. So in no specific order, while you see that on the slide, how do you make that available to your customers? Today, we make phone calls to make things happen, and it takes forever. Half of the things, half of the details get lost in translation or in someone's head. How do we make sure that to reduce the amount of downtime that could potentially occur, how do we make sure that people have the correct list of stuff that needs to go out to the site? And ultimately, we have to make decisions on do we need to purchase some more or manufacture some more things in order to fulfill that need. And in the case of rentals, our industry is full of assets. We know that, and services. In the case of rentals, just like a rental car, it doesn't necessarily come back to the point of origin. We pick up a car in Houston, we drop it off in Dallas. How does that impact the whole scheme of, how our assets are, where they're positioned, and what the loading is? And repair and maintenance, this is a huge black box. People start picking up stuff and just doing things while we have all the SAPs and the Oracles and what have you of the world. There is no visibility and transparency as to what do I have people walk into a cage, pick up some things, and just go off. It is not associated. In the back end, when towards the end of the year, when we have an inventory audit, that is where a lot of people spend a lot of time trying to figure out what happened. And then we have all these mega write-offs, which ultimately impact our bottom line. So this whole thing as an ecosystem is what we're trying to solve and give all the different parties the different visibility so that we have the right data to make decisions. Should I go buy more consumables? Or when should I go buy more consumables in order to make sure that my balance sheet looks good, right? So, and it's almost like a just-in-time. So if we start looking at it as an ecosystem rather than an ERP or a CRM or whatever, then we will be able to get rid of those inefficiencies.
Or, a piece of equipment goes down and you're like, well, I don't know if we have any because we don't have any access to it. And so maybe I just go and spend $500,000 on something when I've got 6 of them sitting in a yard somewhere.
Yeah, you're actually touching on on a really sore topic. And take a different angle or view to this as well. We are all under the pressure and looking at, reducing our carbon footprint. And here we are when we have 6 other of those pieces of equipment sitting somewhere. One of the largest oil companies we were talking to has that problem. They have all the state-of-the-art, if you want to call them that, systems, and they went and acquired that $500,000 piece of asset when they had 6 others sitting somewhere else. So you not only added to your carbon footprint, you also landed up spending that money that you should not have.
So, tell me, Jake, and that's a question to you. How many times have you heard about real-time data analytics?
Just a million times.
So let's say even if we generate a real-time or near to real-time data analytics, how are you sure it's a real-time data capturing?
Yeah, it's a good point.
Right? In the very capital intensive or lot of resource intensive companies, the data is not captured real time. So how come your data is real time?
Yeah.
So you might be seeing real time analytics, but the data capture is not real time. So data is not giving you the right time series, right? Because we are talking to so many companies and working with companies, right? We have seen times where they are creating an order or creating a transaction after maybe 30 hours, or maybe after 24 hours. And you know why? Because their job is to stay out and execute and not be on the system. So how can you bring system on their hands? How can you make your application voice enabled,
Hmm.
right? They might don't want to type. They don't want to make transaction with the fingers. They want to talk. So how does an application will use kind of a Siri kind of an approach and make the transaction happen? So these are the things when you're working in an ecosystem, right? You have to think about, if you're designing an ecosystem, you have to have all right technologies and features in place to make it a real ecosystem. Because real ecosystem is you capture data on time, then that it makes sense to relate it. Otherwise, the KPIs, every output will be skewed towards one or the other.
I think another big talking point, not to get on a super side tangent or anything, but sometimes it's like sometimes you can capture too much data too, right? Right. So if you don't really think about what the output is going to be, what is the utility of the data, right? And if that's not clearly, especially if that comes from, top down, hey, we're capturing all of this data, right? And then that becomes a burden, or if it's very clearly it's not being used, right? And now if half of what you're capturing is essentially junk or garbage, it's easy just to say it's all garbage, right? And then everything, and then over time, the degradation of the integrity of the data set continues to decline.
And it impacts the cloud cost. Today, the cloud computing and cloud cost is so high because so much of data is getting captured.
Yeah.
And you're right. Nobody knows how much of the data is effective. Are we capturing the right data, or is it a junk data? And if it's a junk, how soon we need to trash it?
Yeah.
So, I mean, along those lines, one of the things that we are we are doing is, we capture the right data for the right time and provide that data to somebody else at the right time as well, and make sense of that unstructured data. To Amarpal's point, if you have so much of data, even a simple dashboard, we were talking to one of our clients, even a simple dashboard becomes highly complicated for executives to, understand. So how do we simplify that is so key to how we are capturing data and what we do with it. And if we don't do that, we are going to block all that value creation that is possible out there, which goes back to the $1 trillion problem that we were talking about.
Just to add on to what Indraji said, right? Based on experience, what we learned, it's very important to have a foundation of any system right. And that's what, Equipt is doing, to have a right system in place, which connects the breadth and depth of, as I said, every resource and every processes. So, and for that, to make it scalable, you have to have low code, no code, because you cannot keep on doing coding, right? Every time you're bringing in new features, you cannot keep on doing coding. There has to be reusable components. Once we have that foundation, then it makes sense to talk about, okay, let's talk about integration. So you need to have a powerful integration engine to connect to multiple systems so that you are taking the data and bringing it together, right? And once we have this decided on the integration and the right systems, then people will talk about or should talk about AI ML, right? I know the AI is a very catchy word, right? But I still feel AI is good until the data is good, right? And since the data is not good, people are talking about synthetic data. Come up with their own data to train the models, because data might not be good. So if you're using a synthetic data, how can you assure the output of the model will be right? So there's a lot of questions in my mind when we talk about AI and when we talk about data science, because the data, until you don't have holistic data and high quality data, the models and the training of the models will not be accurate, and that will directly impact business decisions. So there has to be a structure in place to ensure when you're applying AI, you are very much sure about your data, you're very much sure about your systems, you're very much sure about your capturing every data at the right time. So it's a linear trend that people jump around everywhere, and hence we end up spending a lot of money when it comes to IT and when it comes to systems, when it comes to data, because there's so much sporadic efforts which are not connected. So there's a silos within the efforts as well.
If somebody was like listening to this and they were like, well, I've just got thrown in the mix, I've got all this data, I don't even know what's high quality and what's not. Like, how do you even approach that?
So going back to business owners, right? right data, high quality data is known by the people who are data citizens, right? Who owns the data. The data is not owned by IT or data office. Data is owned by the person who is process owner. Again, that's what I'm saying. 360 degree of data, 360 degree of process, because the process owner knows the data, right? So that's why if you make them capture the data at the right time, and if it's correct, they will know it's correct because they are the one who is transacting. So that anybody throwing in the mix will rely on this data citizen to communicate and ensure the quality. So that connection needs to be developed through something. But they are, as I said, not only businesses working in silos, not only department working in silos, but also resources are working in silos. They don't talk. Even if there's a processor of data and there's a data engineer, they don't talk. So you're right. So a lot of times that's where we are talking about digital ecosystem, how we can produce a right digital ecosystem.
And a lot of times, we talked about integration. So there's a lot of people who say, oh, we can integrate with anything. But when we are talking to our clients, we challenge them on what is nice to have and what is a must have, what's a showstopper. That is how you can, one, reduce your cost. Second, you just get the right amount of the right data point instead of, oh, let me just suck in all the different pieces of information, and it confuses me as a user, as a user or a persona in the process. It confuses me. Why am I getting this? What does this really mean? How does this impact me? I'm supposed to deliver on something. So we specifically challenge our clients into thinking what is absolutely required, which makes that data set a lot more manageable. Then you can start trending it accordingly. And now, over time, then you can start doing machine learning models once you have a little bit of confidence, and ultimately AI.
So let's dive into, for one, how are you guys doing it differently? I know we've touched on a few things, and I think one of the things that sticks out to me, low code, no code. Obviously, the rise of that over the past few years, I think it's huge. I think it hasn't been given enough attention. And I don't know if that's just because people don't fully appreciate it, or if maybe everybody is just become desensitized to it now that it's just kind of like everywhere. But you got to think back, 10 years ago when I started my entrepreneurial journey, building technology was hard. You had to absolutely have, develop not just one, but usually like a team of developers to build something. And now with practically, especially now with the rise of AI, between AI and low code, no code tools, you can pretty much build an entire application.
You can, right?
With no technical skills.
That's very true. But again, you need to know what you're building.
Exactly.
So you just asked what we are doing different. We are digitalizing every touch point. And not only digitalizing every touch point, but we are making sense of the output coming out of the touch point. We ensure when the output is coming, like let's say a data point coming out of a touch point, we see the 360 degree view again and say what other areas this can cover or this can impact. And we make sure we connect that. So let's say you're a persona, you are a field technician doing a transaction on the repair order, right? The output of individual steps he's performing is connected somewhere. Somebody is getting impacted. So when we are designing the system, or when we are implementing, or we have already implemented a lot of that, our system is highly connected to every output and input and every persona they will be talking to. In that way, we have this data metrics or data fabric thing pre-generated from the system. Right now, people are spending millions and millions of dollars. Let's say Netflix, any streaming companies, they are spending so much money on their cloud and creating a data fabric and relationships. You know why? Because it was not created when the data was born. When Jake is making a transaction of a debit, the data is born. And if the data is born there, it has to have a relationship. For example, if you spend on Chick-fil-A, it has spent it on Chick-fil-A, it has spent on this burger, who you were talking to on Chick-fil-A, who was your host on Chick-fil-A, right? All that.
You've been looking at my bank transactions.
Exactly.
There's a little bit too many.
Whether you had enough money on that time. Yeah, exactly. Right. So all that, this is a 360 degree view. I'm just giving a very small example, 360 degree view. But people don't design systems with that 360 degree view. But when we do it, we take our time. We don't rush. Okay, let's do this. Let's deliver it, and let's get SaaS model started and get our business some money. No, we go in much detail, and we get hand slapped also sometimes. We get too much carried away, and we just came from Midland, and we got hand slapped to get too much into someone's business. But that's how you need to. You have to instigate and stimulate them to ask, keep on asking questions, and create the 360-degree mapping. Otherwise, you will not be able to create 360 degree if you're not on the whiteboard with them. And they are the owners. You have to
I
make them
think
talk.
a great analogy that I've always had when it comes to data, having started my career in the data side of upstream oil and gas, is that you're playing cards, you're playing poker, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's very hard to play your best hand when you don't know what half your cards are.
Very good. Yep.
You understand what I'm saying? Like
Good point,
you
yeah.
need to have all the cards in your hand. And so you need as much information and intel as you possibly can. So you guys are working with a lot of oilfield service companies, particularly on the rental side. You know, is this something that is like self-service for those guys whenever you engage with them? Is this something that, a lot of people talk about, especially like big ERP systems, it's these longer implementations and integrations and all that kind of stuff. What is if somebody is interfacing with you guys initially, how does that work?
So great question. So think of us like Lego blocks. When we talk about an ecosystem, sometimes to many folks it might sound really daunting. That, oh my God, I'm going to now have to change the world. It is not that way. We're talking about, let's hone in on a specific problem that you have, problem area, and then from there we can start providing the visibility to other departments. So we were talking about spare parts earlier. So how does it impact finance? How does it impact the costing? So financial suddenly. So here you are talking about pulling a spare part from your inventory cage, but how is it impacting finance? So we are not trying to. It's the Lego blocks. Configure it the way you want. So you were asking about self-service. If your business changes, then go add the fields. It's sorry, I'm going to bring this up, but we were at a client's office, and to just get us Wi-Fi access, they would have to submit an IT ticket. By the time we were done with our meeting, we did not have the IT ticket resolved. So we were using our hotspot, which made it really bad inside a building.
I've literally done that a handful of times.
Right? So it's, come on, let's get over this and just get from A to Z faster. And that's where the whole world, technology, everything is heading. Provide the right visibility. Use those Lego blocks to configure it the way you want it. That's the simplicity we bring to the table.
Yeah, and we are giving the complete control over the hands of the process owners, not the super users. You would have heard about the word super user. I completely agree. We need super users to control some
Critical inputs.
data privacy, to control the data. Some have data controls and system controls. However, that delays the process. So if I'm the process owner and I know I want to automate the work order, I should be able to do a checkbox. The work order should be automated. Yeah, I should not be waiting for the super user, send a ticket out and do this. So that we are going that to the extent that we are going to give power to the hands of the owners.
Let me ask you this, because this is something that applies to us, particularly with our CRM. That is the hub for like most of what we do. That's the database. It's it's marketing and sales. It's the website's integrated into it, analytics, revenue. A ton of that kind of applies in that. Whenever you guys are engaging with a company, do you suggest that they have somebody who is kind of acts, quote unquote, as a product owner to understand as things, especially being flexible and being able to like change things? So we have John in house, where if I have the ability and so other people on the team to change things in the CRM, but I don't really do it unless I'm talking to John saying, what are the implications of this, right? If I remove this field, what reports all of a sudden disappear and dashboards disappear, and what are the codependencies of various things in that? And so I don't know if that's something that you guys suggested or if it's
we do suggest a coordinator, but not an owner, because in our world we have multiple owners because we are connecting the ecosystem, right? So we would like to give, as you said, the product owner should be the owner who is using the process or making the transaction. So we are keeping the owners separate, but we have a coordinator who discuss with all these owners.
So ultimately, to add to that is you lock certain fields which cannot mess up your dashboards and your metrics and whatnot. You lock those fields, but let the users do other things. Otherwise, what happens is The system doesn't have those fields. They'll go out and start creating those Excel spreadsheets. Nobody can block any Excel spreadsheet getting created. So why don't you allow that data to reside in the system and then let them just do what they want? And those few critical points that you require that can mess up a whole big thing, you can. And oh, by the way, our system is designed in a way that if I was to add a field and I want to track that field, I could create my own dashboard to just track the interdependencies of that field with other fields in the bigger scheme of things. So give the users that flexibility is what we are about, which makes it a lot easier and prevents them from going outside the system and creating those data islands.
So to create the ecosystem, obviously you need to be able to, integrate, interface with a variety of other systems, in that ecosystem, right? Whether it's via APIs or however you're connecting to that. How do you guys think about that, and what do you guys integrate with them? Like maybe the ERP side.
We have a strong integration engine as part of a tech stack, and the reason we had it, it's easier to create manual APIs and connect systems, but you need a common box like a router, right? It's a box, where every system can get connected to our system, and we'll know all the flows, and we control each application that we are connected to through that box. So we have that box now. We have created it. It's very powerful. It allows us to see the metadata and the landscape of each systems that we are connected to. It allows us to talk to. It allows us to control data privacy, pseudonymization, data. We can transform through that box. So the complete extract and transformation load done through that through that integration engine. So we have developed it. We knew there's a need. Instead of creating manual connections through APIs or web services, we are going to that engine.
So last thing that's kind of like top of mind for me is we kind of go back to our AI conversation. Talking with founders who are in here every single week on the podcast, it's like that's just the hottest topic. Everybody's talking about it. I have some interesting opinions. I'm willing to see kind of how it's going to shake out. Whether AI, does it just like commoditize all of tech, and but now a lot of people are implementing AI into their software. And so I'm curious, obviously talking about assuming you've got great data, right? How are you guys thinking about that? Is that something that's a priority?
It's a priority for us, but moreover, the priority is data. And we have started some AI-driven efforts with the customers, only for the ones we know the data is very strong for them to impact on it. For example, in an SNOP process, they want to forecast the technicians and the rentals that will go along with it based on the various multidimensional inputs they're getting, right? We at that today we think that data is strong enough for us to help the client. Yes, we are working towards it. However, until we are not sure about the data, and we don't suggest it, because it includes a lot of cost, a lot of efforts, and maybe making bad decisions.
And ultimately, it goes back to what are you trying to get out of this?
Yeah.
You can throw, and I'll give you an example. My daughter goes to A&M, and when ChatGPT came out, one of our computer science professors, he said, "Look, I know you guys are going to use this, so let me teach you how to use it right to your benefit." So instead of fighting this, I think it goes back to what are we trying to get out of it, and then apply AI accordingly, not just say AI, everything. So let's get the data right. Let's understand what outcomes we require, because ultimately, as leaders in our industry and organizations, we need to know that the outcome, I mean, no one's going to give us credit if our financials look bad at the end of the day and we have all the AI in the world.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I will be honest, yes, we are using some generative AI features to generate some features in our system, because it's making our life easier than to recreate everything. So again, it goes back to cost, time, and deliverables. So
it's funny. Yeah. So before we kind of move into the kind of the question side of things, so if you have questions, go ahead and throw them in the chat here. We'll bring them on and let these guys answer them. I had a really interesting conversation. I'm not going to say who it was, but it was one of the biggest EPs out there, and I was talking with the tech side of the business, and I wasn't really sure what their sentiment on AI, but he just came out swinging and was just like, it's our number one priority. We were looking at applying AI to every single business unit that we have, and that's kind of a mandate that's kind of come down from the C-suite. And so we are aggressively looking at anything and everything that is going to make our lives easier, make things more efficient, faster, all of that. So I think that was interesting. Having been in the space, the last decade, being on the other side of the table and going in and selling solutions, particularly like I think in like 2013, 2014 when we launched. My first startup there, we were, pitching cloud software, and it wasn't the barrier there wasn't the software. It was the fact that it was in the cloud.
Security.
We were like, what is
Sharing.
the cloud?
Exactly.
That was my conversation half the time with some of these E&Ps. And so now to see just how the industry has embraced things like Bitcoin mining is like, it's mind blowing to me that that's been embraced the way that it has. And obviously we love that. And then now AI, it's just cool. It's a culture shift that has taken place over the last decade to where people are now not as scared of technology and are now really embracing it in this space.
Very true.
All right, guys, if you got any questions, pop in on here. In the meantime, feel free if there's anything else you wanna dive into. We're waiting for some questions.
Yeah, I think we
You
want to
know,
just
round it off.
Yeah, just to running it off, right? We wanted to share what we have gathered as a feedback from various businesses who we worked with. The common themes that we got is they want delivery in weeks because now they expect if we cannot deliver in weeks, AI will. So they are focusing on leaning out operations. So that's the biggest talk: how to lean my operations so that I can make more money and more profits. And the final one was intuitiveness. So everyone is looking for intuitiveness now. As Indrajit mentioned, a lot of workforce would be Gen Zs. So they want to make sure the life is easier for them to operate on. So these are the common things we have gathered through our experience talking to clients. And the first good thing, one foundational output that we got is data capturing. They want to capture right data to make decisions. So which is, as you said, embracing cloud, embracing data, embracing AI. We can see it. They're willing to spend, but they're willing to spend on the right tools.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we're open for questions.
Boss, we got any questions in the chat? Don't be shy, y'all. This is always the part where everybody gets so shy. Oh, we already dove through that. All right, we're gonna give about 30 more seconds. If you got any questions for these guys, don't be shy.
Before we started, we were shy. We are not shy anymore.
It's just like Energy Tech Net in Midland. It's like you open the floor for questions and like nobody wants to be the one to ask the question. Houston's totally different.
Yeah.
You have people all fighting over each other to like ask questions. Midland, it was just like, okay, I'm gonna start calling up people around. Yeah. So speaking of Energy Tech Night, we've got Energy Tech Night OKC coming up in like 3 weeks. I'm excited. It's gonna be the first time in OKC, first time we've done anything out there. So the hype's pretty real. The cool thing is you've got OKC and Tulsa pretty close proximity to each other. So it's kind of like both of those communities coming together. So I think it's gonna be a good time.
This reminds me of how you're connecting the community, right?
Yeah.
That tells us be connected.
Exactly. We used to spend a lot of time in Tulsa. We had some wells up there that we operated forever ago.
See, you are creating an ecosystem now. You're creating an ecosystem of energy.
Yeah, community and ecosystems kind of just go like hand in hand. It's been wild to see how this is just evolved over the past 5-6 years.
Yeah, one good thing I saw in the Energy Tech Net is, people are so shy, but they come out and talk.
Yeah.
And this is giving them a platform to talk and being more confident. Because there will be people who are shy, but they are very much smart here.
Yeah.
If you don't let them talk or bring
Not
what they
everybody's
have.
got the reps in to do the public speaking or to to be in front of large audiences or even coming on on the podcast sometimes. There's a reason that we have all the liquor in the corner. You've got a really, really brilliant engineer in here, and they've never been on a podcast before, and you see all the lights and the cameras and the mic and stuff, and it's very easy to kind of clam up a little bit. And plus, just kind of being an engineer, it's maybe not
tequila.
Yeah, that's like, hey, let's take a little walk over here.
I drink to be shy.
Yeah. I see. Crystal said we got some questions.
Yeah, popping up. You see them?
Oh, here we are.
You're saying where-
What function do OFS companies see biggest ROI in implementing?
That's a good question. The first thing is it's driving top line revenue because you can fulfill your orders faster. You know what state your equipment and even your people, how can you schedule the people? So you can fulfill your orders faster, which drives the bottom at the top line. However, there are other departments such as finance who are now getting a clear visibility of what's happening with their cost, what's driving their cost, and they are also beneficiaries.
Just to summarize, the biggest impact of implementing this in oil field is asset reliability. But that's the biggest talk. How do I sustain my assets and how can I be reliable on my asset? They don't want asset to break down while it's on in the operations. That's a big cost.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
the reliability of assets are very big talks. And second thing is technicians, right? They want to make sure they have a highest utilization of technicians, because in the past they were it's very difficult to track the output of the services.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, particularly from like a maintenance perspective, right? If you're trying to control cost, I mean, one of the easiest things to do is just to take care of the assets that you have. You know, as opposed to, because I've seen companies. I think we were talking about the other day of they had a large fleet, as a lot of companies do, of like F-250s, and something happens on it, rather than just like fixing the truck, they would just like park it, junk it, and just go spend 80 grand on a new truck. And it's like, well, if that's what you want to do, that's great. But if you're trying to like lower how much money you're spending,
Have you
just take
drove
care of your
to
assets.
Have you drove to Midland from here?
Yeah.
From
Oh yeah.
Houston? Have you seen so many equipment lying on the fields, broken, and just staying just on the.
Oh yeah.
I've seen so many. I said, what's going on? Are they going to trash it? Are they going to rebuild this, refurbish it? But it's been 6 months. I'm seeing them at the same spot, not being operated. That's like, again, adding to the carbon.
Yep.
We had weeds growing through the bore of a gate valve. When we went looking for it, proper weeds had grown through the. I'm not kidding. That's real.
All right. So if people want to know more information about Equipt, obviously both of you guys are on LinkedIn. You're very active in the community, so people can come find you there. But website, other places you want to send them.
Yeah, so it's equip-t.com.
Okay.
We're trying to get equipped.com. It's owned by a large company who wants a lot of money to sell us that domain. So
it's usually how it goes. The domain raiders.
So we also have the QR code, so that'll take you directly, if you want to scan it, take you directly to our website, and really reach out, join us on this journey. We're really trying to challenge the paradigm. How do we shift it? How do we think differently without getting, making change management a lot more bite-sized, rather than thinking, oh my God, I have to change the world. We'll do it one step at a time, but it can be really quick steps.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we are friendly. We don't bite. We don't bite.
I think everybody's ever come in contact with you guys knows you're very, very friendly. So guys, this has been a great conversation.
Appreciate you having us here.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you everyone for joining.
Yeah. So if you like this is going to be on the website as well. And so if you want to take this and share it with any friends, any colleagues, feel free to do that. And we will catch you guys in the next